Hi, in front of me here I have a TV tilt wall bracket. They support TVs from the size of 28 inches up to 50 inches, and the VESA standard that would correspond would be up to, we'll say, 600 wide and 400 deep in terms of the VESA holes. The tilt angle we're capable of achieving on this is upwards of 5 degrees or pointing downwards of 15 degrees. And this is what makes this bracket so popular, the flexibility to be able to adjust the angle and hold it at an angle like that. Because obviously when TVs are mounted at a height, things like that, often we want to have it tilted slightly downwards. So let's just come along. It comes in this outer box here, and there's a graphic on the front of it, and it gives a very good illustration of what this would look like when it's assembled. So basically we have a bracket that's mounted on the wall in the back, and what we have here is we have two brackets here that bolt onto the television, and then they're dropped into position onto the bracket that's on the wall. And it's these brackets here and here that we'll use to adjust the angle, right? So I'm going to move this out of the way, and we'll go into detail exactly what comes inside the box. So the first thing to note is we have two locks here. These are safety mechanism locks, and they go on the edge of the brackets once it's fully assembled and mounted on the wall, and it just means it stops the television being able to slide off or accidentally fall down. It has a user manual here. It's pretty straightforward user manual, but it's handy in terms of it just gives a range of all the part numbers, etc., A to C, K, and you can just see exactly which bolt you can use. Just talking about this here, what we have here is we have a range of bolts here going from A all the way to F, and they have various lengths and thickness, and depending on the size of the television you're using, the actual pre-drilled holes, threaded holes on the TVs will be of various thickness or diameter, so that's why we have a variance here, and the variance of length is depending on whether we're using spacers here to stand the TV off the bracket. Sometimes that's an advantage. People want to have it slightly further out and they use the longer screws for it. We have washers here that come in a range of 3 sizes drilled into it, so it's a sort of universal washer that will work with any of these bolts from the smallest to the largest size. We have 6 heavy-duty screws here, cord screws, and 6 plugs, and we'd use that for mounting the actual wall bracket directly onto the wall. We have washers here that are associated with it. So I'm actually going to talk about the main part of the event here now, which is the actual wall bracket, which we mounted onto the wall, and then the part that goes onto the dish itself, or onto the TV itself, along with the safety mechanism bars here that we have. So we'll just get this part discussed. So we can see here we have a range of different ways we can mount this. If we're mounting it onto timber, we'll say, we just use 4 bolts, and they'll be centrally located like this, and we can just screw directly into the timber. Normally, because the timber frame thing will have one central location. If we're mounting onto the concrete, which would be obviously the norm, what we do is we'd use points out at the extremities normally, and here. So we'd use a total of 6. So typically we'd mount it here, 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 and we just put this up against the wall. We'll mark it out, use the spirit level to check that we're getting the holes quite well squared, and then what we'll do is we'll drill the holes, put the plugs in, and mount this directly onto the wall, and once again use the spirit level to make sure that it's fully square before we mount it, okay? So I'm just going to push this over to this side now, and what I'll do here is I'm going to make a little bit of space for myself. I'm going to come along here, and I'm going to talk about the actual brackets that go onto the TVs. So if we look here, there's an up sign on it, and this just says this goes on the top of the TV. And what we have on the back of this is we have our angle tilting bracket here. So this will actually sit into the groove that's on the top of this. And when we come along, what we can do is we can tilt the angle of this. Now we'd obviously do this after the TV in location, but I'll just demonstrate it at this point. So we can tilt the angle here to 5 degrees, but if I push it on the base here, we can see we can mount it a full 15 degrees. We could actually use a 13mm spanner here if we want to lock it tightly into a certain angle, but it'll actually hold its position quite well. It's just a little bit of force needed to push it over and back, okay? So what I'm going to do maybe is just a demonstration of how to assemble this, but before I do that, what I actually might do is just show how this would actually fit onto the TV, and just a quick reference to the actual VESA standard and what it means. So there's a universal standard agreed by all TV manufacturers and TV bracket manufacturers to say that the holes on TVs will be a certain distance apart, okay? So if we come along and we look at this particular TV, we'll see that the distance apart of these particular holes from centre to centre is 200 millimetres. And if we look down here, It's 200 millimeters again. So this would be VISA standard, 200, 200. Now if the holes were 300 apart, it'd be 300 by 300. So you can see here, this is a 39-inch TV. This can cover all the way out to 600 by 400. This actual particular bracket. So that would actually be a massive television, even larger than the 50-inch. But in general, we'll say you're not using this type of bracket with a TV larger than 50-inch. So that's why we sort of specify it for that reason. So I have an interest there. So if we come along, what we could do is, and we'll just look at the up sign, we can actually come along and we can mount this onto the back of the TV. And what we would do is we'd use just the washer and the bolt and mount it, or we could use the spacers to space it out a certain distance off the TV. So once we have these two brackets fitted onto the TV and have the other bracket successfully fitted on the wall, it's simply a matter of dropping the TV with the brackets on it onto the wall bracket. And we'll just demonstrate that. So hopefully this part of the overview is somewhat clear to you. And what we'll do now is we'll come along, and when we have the wall mounted, the thing to point out here is when we have this wall bracket mounted on the wall, these should be pointing upwards. And when we get this bracket here, we should have the up pointing upwards. So if we come along here, what I can do is, I'm not sure the best way to angle it here for you, hopefully you're able to pick up on this, but I just put this over the lip here, and I drop it down. And now it's reasonably secure, but what would happen here is, if somebody did an upward pressure on this, you could actually knock this off. So how to securely lock this into position. So what I'm going to do at this point is, I'm going to demonstrate where the little bars we have here come into their own. So we have these bars here, they're identical, there's two of them, and they slide in from either side. So I'm just going to tilt this back, and what we do is we just slide this in here like this, and we would use the locks I demonstrated earlier to lock this into position here. So there's two holes that line up here, and it just means when it's locked in, it's impossible to move this bracket. We can move it over and back, but we can't actually take it off the wall bracket that's on the wall. So we can obviously replicate the process on the far side. So as you can see, it's a very, very cleverly, neatly designed bracket. To actually mount and put this up, very, very straightforward. All the basic assembly work is done, so there's only a few component parts in it. So that's it anyway, an overview of the TV tilt wall bracket covering TVs from 28 inches to 50 inches and giving an angle tilt of between -5 and 15 degrees.